Hello and welcome back to Joe Bailey Revision. Today we're going to be looking at business topic 1.5, which is about understanding external influences on business. So first we've got to look at stakeholders because that has a big influence on the business. So a stakeholder is basically someone who owns a stake in a business, so someone who the business impacts them. So first there's shareholders. So shareholders own a percentage of the business. They're interested in dividends, which is the money they get back each month from the business. So they particularly like business growth as they want the business to be making more money, so they get a higher amount back through their percentage. The next stakeholders are employees. They care about their job security, pay, and prospects. So they care about how safe they are staying in their job. They care about how much they're getting paid, and they care about like promotions and stuff like that. And especially for employees, there's these things called trade unions, and they're used to represent employees, so to check everything's going all right for them and they're not being treated badly and anything. So next stakeholder is the government. So the government collects tax from businesses, so they gain money from businesses. So they want business to go well, so they get a lot of tax from them. Also, businesses increase the employment of a certain area, so the government wants them to thrive, so the people are working. Next stakeholders are banks. So banks lend money to a business, and they often want businesses to succeed, so they get their money back. Particularly if you've got like limited businesses, if the business had no money, they'd have no way of getting the remaining money, so they want it to succeed so they can get the money back. Also, stakeholders, suppliers. So the suppliers want orders, and that can build loyalty with a business. They also want a quick payment so they get the money right. So basically, suppliers are other businesses that give the things to what the business make, and they want good deals. Customers, they want a quality product that's safe. They also want a fair price. Customers also tend to care about ethics a lot when they're buying products, and it can influence what they buy. So linked to ethics, there's also pressure groups, which are groups that want businesses to respond to certain issues, such as environmental or social issues, and they run campaigns and protests to get things to change. So stakeholders can have conflicting wants from a business. So if a pressure group wants a company to work more ethically, and so, for example, give their workers a higher wage, but the shareholders want the company to make more money and not pay them a higher wage, you can often have conflicts between these groups, and most of the time, some of them go together clearly, but some of them can compete and contrast and conflict. Okay, now let's look at the second part of this, technology and business. So, in a business, technology has a big impact. As technology improves, new products can be developed. So things that never existed before can be made, such as like the mobile phone. When that didn't exist, they wouldn't have been able to sell that, but now it does. It's a growing business. So also e-commerce, so that allows for the selling of products on the internet, which allows them to reach a wider reach of customers. So more people can buy a product than ever before because of the range of the internet and due to the new technological invention of it. Also, there's m-commerce, which is purchases with mobiles, which is often used in a business. It's kind of similar to e-commerce, but it's especially about recently, because before e-commerce would be on the internet, but it'd be on computers. But m-commerce, it's on a mobile phone, so you can do it anywhere. So it's like even bigger, really. There's also social media, which developed due to technology, and it's like a newest form of advertising. And what's particularly good about social media is it can reach a wide range of people, because people of all ages and all kinds of people use social media. And it can be cheap because it doesn't cost that much. Also, it can be targeted, because on social media, they can target things at specific groups of people, so you can get the perfect target market and a wide range of people in that target market, which is perfect. Also, digital communication. So this is between employees, so they can share work more efficiently and communicate more efficiently. Even people higher up in the business, they can have meetings on like Skype calls and stuff, which is kind of epic. Digital communication is also with customers though. So like they can offer assistance through digital communication to customers, but also receive in reviews. So there's multiple different ways that it helps customers, helps the business deal with them. Next, there's payment systems. So this includes things like loyalty cards, and loyalty cards have been developed due to technology, of course, and they allow for things like increased people returning there, which increases repeat purchases. So people are more likely to come back if they've got a loyalty card because they think they're getting something extra from that place. Also, something else relatively new, well, a lot more new, is contactless payment, and this increases the speed that someone can buy a product for. So this means more customers can be served in the same time. It also means there's less queues, meaning it's more convenient to buy something if you're using this system, or if everyone is. So next, let's look at business and legislation. So legislation ensures safety and fairness in the workplace and to consumers. So legislation is basically the laws. So a failure to follow legislation can lead to fines and potential bankruptcy. So this could be really bad for the business if they don't stay up to date with the laws. So first, let's look at employment law. So employment law is all about protecting the health, safety and rights of employees. So first, there's the Health and Safety at Work Act in 1974. Not sure if you need the dates or not, but it's easier to be safe. It's basically meant that the health of a worker cannot be affected by their work. So employers must provide both safe machinery and safe premises. So this would of course lead to increased costs for the business. However, it would lead to decreased compensation over time because they don't have to pay out so much for accidents that happen in the workplace if not as many accidents are allowed to happen. So next we've got the Equal Pay Act of 1970. These aren't in order, it's just random, where workers who do work equally get the same pay regardless of gender. So this was the idea that men and women would get paid the same for doing the same work, basically. So that could increase costs for a business if they were originally paying certain people less. So next is the Sex Discrimination Act of 1975. So it basically meant you couldn't be sexually discriminated in employment, recruitment, or training. So they couldn't turn you down for employment, turn you down for recruitment or training because of any of these things, and they couldn't treat you differently, basically. Race Relations Act of 1976. It was illegal to discriminate based on race or ethnic group. This would have a big impact on businesses about who they employed. Like they wouldn't get a decision over whether to employ someone just because of their race or something like that. So they'd have to treat everyone equally due to that. Next is the Employment Protection Act of 1978, which meant that employees must have an employment contract, and this would help avoid unfair dismissal. So if they have a contract, they are promised this much money for this much work. They can't be messed about, basically. Also, redundancy pay had to go to employees if their job had been stopped if they'd worked there for 2 years, which would, of course, lead to more pay from the business. So far, this legislation is making the business pay more, but it's also making it better for employees mostly. Well, yeah. And next, there's consumer protection. So there's also laws about consumer protection. So let's start off with the Sale and Supply of Goods Act. So this means that goods must be satisfactory. So what does that mean? That basically means they must be of a safe quality. Goods aren't dangerous, basically. So they must be all right to use. And next is the Trade Description Act, which meant that products and services must work as advertised. So this led to a lot fewer scams because you can't just put out there something that has false claims on it. That's no longer allowed. So next is the Consumer Credit Act, which meant that the customer is protected when borrowing money or buying credit. So you can't get messed about by a bank or someone lending you a loan or something, which is pretty good. Or a business where you're buying it in credit. So basically these things all protect customers and they stop bad business practices such as lying about things and selling bad goods. So overall, this would potentially, most of these consumer ones would actually help business because they'd help legitimate businesses get further, and then businesses doing fake dodgy stuff slow down. So that overall is good for the consumer and the business. That's mainly good for the employees, but could be seen as good for the business as well, ethically, which might help with the customers buying their products. So next, let's look at the economy and business. So unemployment in the economy would lead to a lower consumer income. And if there's a lower consumer income, that would lead to less sales, particularly premium goods. Because when people don't have as much money, they tend to buy only essential items. Also, unemployment could lead to more potential employees, which could potentially help the business, and they would want less from their jobs, so potentially they'd go in for a lower wage, which may help out the business overall in terms of money. Also, about the economy is inflation. So this is a sustained increase in prices and decrease in the worth of money over time. So inflation basically means that a business can sell products for more. However, it causes wages to increase as the people need to get paid more, and raw materials cost more because the increase in prices is on the things they're buying as well as the things they're selling. So mainly this would be positive. If they're making most of their money from selling products, this would be good for them. However, if they aren't making money from selling products, so if it was some sort of organization that just bought things, such as like a school or something, this would be difficult for them as they're not selling out the products, they're just paying the wages and just buying the materials. So yeah. Next, let's look at interest rates. So interest rates, if they increase, a higher percentage is added to loans, which means when interest rates are low, it's easier to borrow money. So when interest rates are low, a lot more businesses will borrow because it's a lot safer for them as they need to pay a lot less back if something goes wrong. And next, let's look at exchange rates. So these are slightly complicated. So it's basically about trading between two countries. So if one has a stronger currency relative to the other, it will be cheaper for them to import things. So it'll be cheaper for the big one to bring in from the little one. However, it'll be more expensive for the big one to send things to the little one, which makes sense because if you're getting something smaller, then it's going to be easier to buy if you're bigger. However, if you're trying to get some of the bigger to some of the smaller, it's more complicated, isn't it? Also, weak currency relative to others. So this would lead to cheaper exports and more expensive imports, which is basically the exact opposite of this. So if you've got a weaker currency, it's cheaper to sell things out, but more expensive to bring things in. And that's why a lot of raw materials and stuff are imported. If a country has a strong currency, they'll import all the raw materials before making things because it's a lot cheaper. And then they'll tend to sell them in a home market. So next, let's look at overall external influences. So this is sort of like a summary of everything we've had so far. So first there's political influences, which are new laws which have to be followed. So these have to be followed by the business, or it can of course lead to bad things for them, like fines. And next, economic influences. So this is all about the monies. So exchange rates help tell the business what to import or export. Inflation, of course, exists. Interest rates help know when it's the best time to borrow for growth and when it's the best time to not borrow, obviously. And then economic influence, average personal incomes and unemployment. So if someone has a lower income, they're less likely to buy something expensive. So if the general income's low, then expensive products are going to be hard to sell. But if the general income's high, expensive products, they're going to be easier to sell. Another external influence is the technological influences. So this is all your machinery. So new production methods could lead to something being cheaper or more efficient. So someone using old production methods might get put out of business because these new methods are so much better and so much more effective. Next is e-commerce, which of course leads to new competition because people tend to buy a lot more things online now than they used to, and that's why a lot of small businesses in like small towns are shutting down because they don't have the power to go on the internet. So next, let's look at social influences. So this is a link to things like changing tastes. So if people change what food they like or what fashion they like, what's old won't sell as well. Also, as the average age of the population changes, so it's increasing in the minute, which means it influences demands for certain products. So people of certain ages are more likely to buy certain things. They have different tastes, I guess you could say. Ethics and morality. So some people will decide not to buy a product or to buy a product depending on how ethical or moral it is. So they can decide like that some products aren't okay, so I'm not going to buy it. Some business practices are not okay, so I'm not going to buy anything from that business. That's the whole thing about brand image. You've got to have a positive brand image, or socially, people can all decide, we're not buying from there. And you know what you need? You need the customer. They're important. So yeah, that was topic 1.5, understanding external influences on business. Joe Bailey revision. Let's go. Yeah. Goodbye.